A while back, I got a rude comment on one of my videos, and I'll tell you more about it later. But as you do, as someone who puts things out online, you think about it, and I have some thoughts I want to share. The comment is around productivity, laziness, and this idea of whether or not you are on top of your life. So we've all been there. We've all had seasons where you're tired, you're overwhelmed, or you're just going through something hard in your life. And at the end of the day, you get done with everything and you don't know what it is that you did with your time. You don't feel accomplished. You look around and maybe you're in a mess, or you have goals that you're not achieving. Like, you know, the list is long of what could happen if you're in this season. I have to go in a minute, so I'm going to keep this quick, but I'll just tell you the comment because this is silly. It says, do you really need a card to remind you to make your bed? Not executive material. Now, this was in relation to, it was commented on a video that was talking about the sidetracked home executive system. If you subscribe to my channel, you know what I'm talking about here. It is a book where they've trademarked the name Sidetracked Home Executives, and it's about a specific kind of person who is managing her home and is kind of like the executive that's in charge of making sure everything gets done. The book helps those that are distracted, that have, you know, a million other things they're thinking about, and they don't necessarily know what to do to get everything in control. I don't think this person understood the context behind the video, so I don't, like, I say rude because at first that was my gut reaction, and then I thought about it a little bit and I was like, oh, they don't really know. So yeah, it sounds kind of silly. You're saying you're an executive material, yet you need to be reminded to make the bed. Now, do I need to be reminded to make the bed nowadays? No, but have I in the past? Yes. And I think, like I said, we've all gone through seasons like that, so I want to talk about it. So I want to talk about it in this. I just got this book from the library because I had my kids watch his YouTube speech. It went super duper viral. There's like millions and millions of views on this one speech and multiple videos. What do you call this? #1 New York Times bestseller book. It was by Admiral William H. McRaven, who is just incredible. He's such a role model for young men. And I got the book, and as I was checking out the library, this librarian, who's generally pretty grumpy, even said, oh, I love this book. And I thought, oh, how funny. She's never said that about any of the books I've gotten before. But so one thing that I thought about was that that's not how I would describe myself as executive. I think I would be the opposite, where I'm very airy-fairy. Even as someone that is getting things organized and on top of things, I don't see myself as being like, oh, Gen Z executive. So what he says is that making your bed is a discipline. He goes over the idea that, gosh, I have to think about this and tell you. Okay. So the chapter 1 is the one that talks about the bed, making the bed. I almost said boat. The title of the chapter, or the way that it kicks off with, it says, start your day with the task completed. That's the whole idea about making your bed, and the feeling that it gives you at the end of the day, that, or even at the beginning, and saying, I got this done at least. So when you first start reading the book, he talks a little bit about just, and we've all seen it in movies, but the idea that these Navy SEALs are in really sparse, minimal rooms with just like a closet and like a small bed and just minimal bedding. And so he talks about that setting, which I think is something to just remind at least myself of the value in having that minimal setting, so that your thoughts are simplified and they're able to be on that bigger picture, the bigger goal, or the bigger, you know, purpose in your life, rather than on all the little things. The chapter also talks about, so there's like a drill sergeant, I don't know, I forget what that term is in the SEALs, but there's a guy that goes around, you stand in front of your cot, and he talks about how it's every day you get inspections from your clothes down to your bed, and it talks about the person in charge bouncing a quarter off the bed and how the quarter reacts to how you made your bed. And he infers that there's been times when he hasn't had to do this and he's had to become a sugar cookie, and he talks about it in the book. Actually, the whole book is great. So if you're looking for a Christmas present for like a teenager or college student, I think this is a great book. It's really easy. It's like a quick read, and it's something you can just like carry with you as you go through different stages of life. And there's like a part with the parachute. Oh, It's just really well written too, and it's quick. So anyway, the idea is that even in the Navy SEALs, these like the best of the best, that standard is something you practice every day. Not only that, but there's this idea that you are being held accountable too. It's starting to get hot in here. Hold on. I won't drive anywhere just yet. He says, it was my first task of the day and doing it right was important. It demonstrated my discipline. It showed my attention to detail. And at the end of the day, and I'll tell you what he said at the finish, but reading this made me kind of tear up when I read it because I love the idea that it demonstrated his discipline. It showed his attention to detail. It's the little things, right? Especially at the end of the day when you've had a really crummy day, maybe things didn't go your way, you didn't get as much done as you wanted to, maybe you received terrible news, and at the end of the day you return to this bed that's been made and it looks perfect and you know that you tried your best in doing this one simple task. And I just thought that was so beautiful. So I'll finish his quote in just a second, but I gotta go. He says, it would be a reminder that I had done something well, something to be proud of, no matter how small the task. So the same kind of idea. He also said making my bed was the one constant that I could count on every day. And I think that's something to be said, especially since I think his day was probably pretty difficult when he was going through that training. He talked about his time when he was actually like working in the field and how he'd have even just like a small cot and a sleeping bag, and he would still make sure that that was made to perfection. Seeing over Saddam Hussein, he noted that Saddam never made his bed. So to take it back to Sidetracked Home Executives and the book and the card deck and that daily reminder card of make your bed. In their book, they have 2 rules. The first rule is to get up early. Say it's to have time for yourself and to make sure that you're able to get ready before the morning craziness happens. And their second rule is to make your bed. It's part of the system baked into it. Like I said, do I need a reminder? Not now. Have there been times where I did need a reminder? Absolutely, especially when I had little kids coming to the side of your bed, waking you up really early, and then you have to get up and you're with them. And then by the time you realize it, you're almost done with your day and your bed is still a mess and the laundry's not done. So the card just helps you have that foundation, the grounding. If you get going with your day and you say, oh, I have to make my bed, then it kind of resets your day. In the book, they also quote a Harvard philosopher around the idea that you have to change your attitude in order for your external circumstances to change. So first it's internal and then outside changes. And so often the pattern usually goes the opposite way, where you feel like you have to change your external circumstances for your internal for you to feel better. And they're saying it's the other way around. And where I would typically say, or 100% agree with that and find that to be true in my own life, I also feel like when it comes to making your bed, having those little reminders in the external world that this is your standard, that this is what you're capable of, does help your attitude. And since I've just offered an opposing thought with the Sidetracked Home Executives and opposing to my traditional way of being too, there's also the opposing thought of, you know, don't make your bed in the morning. And I just thought this was funny when I was doing research. The research I looked at including statistics, which depending on which survey you looked at about making your bed as an American would range from, you know, 70% of Americans do it to 40% of Americans do it. So it really depended on who was hosting the survey and at what year too they were hosting it. And at the end of the day, I don't really care. And it doesn't really add too much to this conversation. I did come across a study that was talking about dust mites and the idea that a warm bed that is, you know, you put the cover over it right away and it's kind of damp from you being in it overnight, that it's a breeding ground for dust mites. So if you... And I just kind of added this as like, well, this is kind of an interesting thing to remind yourself of, because I also have a Freshen Your Linens card too that I look at every week. And I do kind of like a bed airing out and linen spray. Sometimes I'll air out the bed depending on like how quickly our day is going. But this is a practice in a lot of Europe that they air out their bed. And it was first, the only reason why I thought to do this too is because of Zero Waste Home. I'm at one point in my life was very, very, I mean, this was important to me to reduce my waist. And I followed her book to a T. And I absolutely adore the book. I adore the practice. And at some point, definitely want to get back into it. But she shares some of her routines. And part of it was airing out her bed in the morning. And I thought that's just something fun to bring up. And if you haven't read that book, so I've already made one book recommendation. Here's a second one. Zero Waste Home is a great book to add to your repertoire if you haven't read it yet. With that being said, what are some other daily routines that appear to be a given but are really a discipline you practice? And I think about this every night when my husband helps out in the kitchen, and he's so sweet to clean some of the dishes, whether it's our children or it's our partners. We all have different standards or things that we've practiced over time. So the idea that something is just a given, that, oh, of course you're going to make your bed, it's not really so. You've practiced a certain way of doing things over the years. And in my case, went into hospitality as a way to get out and meet and chat with other adults like 5 years ago. And I was at a high-end resort. They had a different way of making the bed, and it was just like kind of like the Navy SEALs, where it was very procedural. There was a certain standard that the bed had to be made at. It was just kind of fun to learn that. And then since then, I've applied that to making my own bed, just because I've seen the bar raised and seen, oh, this is how some people accept their environment. And I really like that. So I put that into practice. And again, it was a discipline. It was something that every day I've worked my way up to it. If my husband makes the bed looks very different. There's things, maybe you're already making your bed, maybe you're making it to the standards of the Navy SEALs, but maybe there's other areas in our lives that we could be looking at as like this daily reminder. So like whether it's a daily card for making your bed, or it's like if you follow the Fly Lady or any of these other systems, there's different values like having a clean sink at the end of the night. Just little things that you can practice to remind yourself of those values. So at the end of all of this, am I offended by the comment? No, I'm not. Maybe I was taken aback at first, but I'm not offended by it because, and I'm not embarrassed by it either, because every once in a while, I definitely feel like sometimes the cards feel like a lot, and I feel like other people don't. Like, I'm the only one I know that uses this system. Why does no one else need something like this in their lives? And maybe they do. Maybe it would help them. I'm not embarrassed by it because it says I have standards. It says it to myself. I have standards, especially when so much of the world feels like it's losing its standards. It feels good for me to just be reminded that I have things that I like to be a certain way. That I want to push myself to do better every day and become a better person. I think that there's value in that. And by having the cards, whether I'm looking at it or actively using the card deck every day, it's a daily reminder where I don't have a sergeant that's checking up on me or anything else that's holding me accountable. It's the card is just a way to touch it, feel it, and say, okay, this is who I am, and this is how I'm going to go about my day today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out, I have videos on the card deck. I'll share the playlist with this video. It's based off of the Just Get Started card deck with those daily reminder cards, and it's just a way for you to get into, it's the Sidetracked Home Executives card system, and I just wanted a way where you could jump off ground zero and get started without even having to think about anything. And then as you go through the cards, you can say, oh, this is a thing that I need to add in. I don't need to do this. I want to change this to say something else, or this takes me longer. And then you can go into Canva, make those changes, and print them out easily. That was it. I'm going to go ahead and make 2 more videos for next week, because that is my goal, to do 2 videos a week, because I'm working on a 12-week plan. I've incorporated or transferred everything that I had in my planner over to this card system, and part of that is that I am on week 4. Next week is going to be week 5 of my 12 weeks to a better YouTuber goal. And in doing that, I need to stay consistent, but I need to get those videos done and ready to schedule. So I'm going to go make a video about preparing for NaNoWriMo or Preptober.